talk about the elements, because we talked about signs are qualified, their characteristics are made from a combination of planets and elements. We talked about the planets, right? So now we're going to talk about the elements. There are 5 elements. You have fire, earth, air, water, and then you have ether. So a lot of people ask me, like, isn't air like the same as ether? It's actually not. Air is like the air that we breathe. Ether is more akash, or it's kind of like, you can't breathe ether. It's like it's above all of these elements, and it's kind of the glue that holds all of the elements together. So we have basically, if you look at a pentagram, the 5 parts of the star represent the 5 elements, and it just means balanced life. These are the forces of nature coming together in harmony. It's a 5-pointed star. So we have this fiery planet, which is Mars. It brings a lot of heat. It transforms, it protects, it cooks our food, right? It does difficult jobs. It's sort of like, initiating and breaking things down. We have an Earth planet, which is Mercury, which is Earth and material resources that are being traded, goods and services. You have the air planet, which is Saturn. It's wind, scattering seeds for growth. Also, air dries things up. If you ever leave food out in the open and it's out in the air, it's dried up, right? So that's what Saturn kind of does. It dries up all the moisture, ages things. That's why it's represented by air. The water planet is Venus. Venus is about water, holy rivers, bathing, purifying. It's very life-giving. So it has to do with like reproductive fluid. It has everything to do with water and life, and even being like an embryo inside water. So water is all about life-giving. You have the ether planet, which is Jupiter, and it's expansive. It's also above kind of thing, so it's about God being sort of this all permeable, all-pervasive kind of force in the world. So the sun and the moon don't have a connection to the elements because they are higher vibrations of fire and water. So just as like the Mars is the fire, the sun is the higher vibration of that, and water is Venus, and the moon is a higher vibration of that, because again, they're the cosmic parents that kind of create everything. And these are the 2 factors that really we're looking at time. We have the sun and the moon. Every relationship between the sun and the moon is what creates time. The other planets show us what's going on within that time. Okay, let's talk about, I think that's a little bit off topic. Let's just move to more signs and how they operate. So the Rashis operate in accordance to qualities as well. So if you heard me earlier, I said it's like a movable, or it's cardinal, or it's fixed. So these also alternate. So you have Chara, which means it's cardinal or movable. It means it's initiative. It's usually the first one. It's the one that makes the move. It's the first piece in the chess game. You have Vrishabha or Taurus, which is Thira. Thira means fixed. It means settled. It means grounded. It means it's not going anywhere. And then you have Vishvabha, which means it's mutable. Mutable is different than movable. Movable just means it goes back and forth, like this. So that's why Geminis can be fickle. That's why Libras can kind of weigh their options and sit there and not be indecisive. And Aquariuses are just in a different category because they tend to be a little bit contradictory. But the movable is that back and forth energy. So we have Chara, Thira, Vishvabha, and it goes like that in order. Then you have the gunas. The gunas, there's also 3 types of gunas. Now, what is a guna? It's a type of energy. So Rajasic is the first type. It's basically kind of the same as movable, fixed, and mutable, but Rajasic is kind of that initiatory energy that is very passionate, energetic, enthusiastic, likes to, be out on the town and experience lights and colors and sounds. And it's sort of this kind of like experiencing life, and it's very action oriented. It's kind of out there doing stuff in the world. Tamasic is the opposite. It's a dullness, it's laziness, it's kind of it's rest, actually. It doesn't have to be a negative connotation. It could just be inactive, right? So you have the two opposites. And then you have sattvic, which is a balance between activity and inactivity. Because in order to have a productive life, you have to have both. You can't burn yourself out, and you can't be always resting, right? So that it's that kind of balanced energy that's more of a kind of spiritual type energy as well. Everyone has a mix of all three gunas in their nature. Today's lecture was really about the sun signs. Why are there 12 sun signs? We talked about that from an astronomical viewpoint, like mathematically. We also talked about how are the 12 signs different? Why do they operate in different ways? It's a combination of the elements and the planets. Now, if you remember at the very beginning, I mentioned that Vedic astrology is different from Western tropical astrology. We look at sun signs and moon signs. Now, there are 27 moon signs within 12 sun signs, and that's a whole nother lecture. Today's focus was just on the sun sign aspect of Vedic astrology. So I hope you all learned something today, and maybe this was fun. And any questions? Yes, sir. Vedic astrology comes from India, and especially Hindu belief systems, Hindu culture. And it basically, Vedic astrology predates Christianity, predates a lot of these more, quote, modern religious contexts of looking at the sky, because it comes from the Holy Vedas. And the Vedas are the most ancient book that we have. So astrology is actually called Jyotisha, or Jyotish. Jyotisha means the study of light, basically. So Jyotisha is Sanskrit. It comes from the Holy Vedas from ancient India. And it's still practiced and preserved there within that culture. Now, Western astrology comes from more Hellenistic astrology, which is from the Greeks. So you have Alexander the Great, who traveled to India. They traded gold for pepper and spices. And not only along this trade route that they established with India, they also traded ideas and philosophies, and they traded notes on the observable sky. So you're getting different religious kind of explanations or religious belief systems mixed into, like, basically Greek mythology. It comes from Hellenistic, the Greek world, and that's kind of more of what people practiced here in the West. It doesn't necessarily take into account the goddess element, the moon element, which is why I like the lunisolar, because it's both. There's gods and goddesses in the Hindu pantheon. So that's just another main difference. Does that answer your question?
Good.
Okay, good. Yeah. Yes.
I saw the word dosha. You indicated too deep, but could you give us 60 seconds on dosha?
When we're looking at Ayurveda, we're looking at people who have different doshas. So you have Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. And we all have all three of these elements within us, but we all have a predominant dosha. The parts of doshas are more about Ayurveda, but there's an overlap. So I'm not an Ayurvedic health practitioner. I'm more on the readings side, but when I'm looking at people and how they are, how their nature is, I look to see if they have more planets in Rajasic signs, or more Tamasic signs, or if they're more Sattvic. So in general, if I'm seeing a cluster of planets in more Rajasic signs, I can see that they're a go-getter. They're out there, they're probably in commerce, or they're out in, corporate, probably lifestyle. If they're more Sattvic, they're probably more of like meditators, and they're going on spiritual pilgrimages, and they're writing books, and they're writing poetry and making photography, right? People who are tamasic tend to have more health issues because they're not as active. Their body is becoming a little bit more, I hate to say lazy because it seems like a judgment, but it's kind of more an inactive state of being. So these people need a little bit more push to kind of get up and go, or they need a little bit more motivation. They tend to be a little more lost. So, and these are just styles or qualities of life, and we all have all three of these within us. And there's also different time periods in life when things are more active. Both Ayurveda and Jyotisha are limbs in the Vedas. So they're both in the holy text. They're just kind of like cousins, but they are used in conjunction. Any other questions? Yeah?
If I figured out my ascendant, sun, and moon sign.
It's important to use sidereal coordinates and not tropical coordinates, because we use the sky, we measure the sky differently. So tropical astrology, Western astrology, measures your planetary placements based upon the seasons. And Vedic astrology looks at the constellations, where they actually were in the sky. So one is a representational zodiac, which is Western astrology. It represents the sky, but it's not accurate. Vedic astrology is looking at the constellations in the actual sky. So it's much more like astronomically accurate. Those calculations. There's also different ayanamshas. Ayanamsha just means the measurement between the Western and the sidereal systems. So people use different measurements of ayanamsha. I use Chitrapaksha ayanamsha. Yes?
Do you have to pick one or the other? For instance, is my sun sign in tropical is Pisces, but in sidereal in Vedic it's Aquarius.
Yeah.
Does that mean I have the combination? Because I'm like textbook Pisces.
Yeah, so here's the thing. You are not just one sign.
Right.
When we're looking at the Kala Purusha, the cosmic man, he's a compilation of all the signs, right? So you have all of the planets within your chart, and you have all of the signs within your chart. The sun sign will indicate your soul, right? The moon will indicate your mind or your personality type, sort of your temperament, your basic kind of character traits and qualities. And the ascendant will show your body. Because we are tripart beings, we're body, mind, and soul. We're not just one thing. So I would say, from my experience, the first thing that I look at is the ascendant, because that's the time of day. Then I look at the moon sign. What is that person's ascendant sign? That's the core of like their life path. That's who they are. Their moon sign will show the day they were born. So we're kind of getting a little bit more into, okay, it's a general but still specific day. The moon sign will show the day they were born and sort of their inner makeup and their kind of basic personality traits. And then the sun is pretty general because it moves through a sign in 30 days. How many people are born during 30 days? They can't all have the same personality traits, right? And when you're looking at the sun is a ball of fire in the center of our solar system, but it's not a solid mass. It doesn't have any physical quality to it. So how that relates to us is it is our aura. Also look at the other planets. Maybe you have a stellium, or a clustering of all your planets. Say like Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter are all in Pisces, in the sidereal zodiac. But in the Western tropical zodiac, your sun is in Pisces. So there's always an explanation as to why you resonate with a certain sign, but there's also an explanation as to why that can be when your signs change, because there is a 23 to 24 degree difference between these two signs. So sometimes there's also an overlap too, because there's 30 degrees in a sign, and the difference measurement between the two systems is about 24 degrees. Yes?
What if you're a cusp? So you do inhabit both qualities, but you reside in one?
Have you, question for you, have you looked up your sidereal zodiac?
You look it up.
Okay, deal. If you're a cusp sign and you have both of these, then I would say the previous sign is more like your sign, because again, it's going to be more true to the sidereal zodiac as the signs move back about 23 degrees. So going to the previous side would be more what I would lean to. And also, if you're looking more into the lunisolar part of it, you have to look at the nakshatra or the moon sign that you were born. Whole other talk. And maybe the library will be so kind to have me back for that one. You all can come to that.
And we love your feedback too.